Welcome back. So let's try this way. Try with this very general subtopic. Why we study religion? What religion is good for you? Good for our life? What religion can do for me? You can ask that question um, legitimately. Many people, as you know, are very religious. There is a various religious groups in each region, each country, or various different under their cultural background and history. We do go to church, temple, worship to the God or to for whatever different region. If you're Muslim, you might be entering Ramadan at this point for about a month, worshiping to the Mecca for, I believe it's 6 times or 5 times per day. Very devoted activities and rituals to follow. If you are Catholic, you participate in the Mass. You may be baptized, either Catholic or Protestant, and to being a Christian. If you're Buddhist, you may come across visit the temple to donate food in Thailand or Malaysia or Southeast Asia, or you go to Buddhist temple chanting. You may see Chinese Buddhist temple. You went in there, burn a incense, and do worshiping for your own good, for your own well-being, and for your families. You pray. The prayer is common in Christianity. Buddhism, if you're Muslim, it's the same similar thing you do. But every single tradition trying to follow different doctrines, teachings, or different gods. Or sometimes they don't even talk about the gods at all. Then why we do this? Why we do this? All this experience, activities, maybe not directly related with our money-making business. For your own daily routine, for your own survival, for your own regular education system doesn't talk about it, but many of you grown up and influenced by our religious backgrounds. And first, we need to know what is good for us to recognizing it. And second, you may need to think about why you doing that, those behaviors, religious behaviors. Are you just following blindly because your parents do, So you follow, or that is your tradition, that is from your community, from your tradition in your culture. So you don't raise question about it, you just adopting it. That's one way to most of us experience. Nothing more about it. But we do need to thinking about it critically, what is good for us. Then we can ask, right? I don't want to go too broad to touch base each religion, but just raise this question to you when you're looking at Buddhism as well. So why we, among all those religions, how do we looking at this Buddhism, this thing about called Buddhism? Why we have to worship Buddha? That's a quite big question mark for myself too. You do meditate. Meditation is not part of worship, but when you go to the temple, you see many people do worship towards the Buddha. And many people see Buddha as a god. I can tell you straight, Buddha is not a god. Buddha was a human being back in 5th century BCE that who trying to um, cultivate himself to become enlightened one. When we say enlightened one, is just simply say awakened one, trying to be awake, waking up from what you do not know. Now he knows better, I would say, uh, in a simple way. So when you're waking up from prior self to a new self, that is enlightenment. That is what Buddha achieved. What that means is it's not a tough thing to do. Everybody does wake up in a certain points in throughout our life. So when you grow up, I am naive and doing stupid things. But when you grow up elderly, at my age, you wake up, you get a wake up call, say, oh, I cannot do that anymore. And then you are enlightened. You are enlightened from that previous naive or primitive thought process. So you're grown up now. So you see the world differently. You have a different perspective to looking at the world and know how to deal with, to live with it, and relate it with your own experience with that understanding. So that is a common thing that everyone is doing. So what Buddha achieved, even though it's a very highest level of the understanding or enlightenment stage, but that does not mean he is the God, because God is unreachable, right? I'm just giving you a thorough, very general theological, discussion here. It could be go on and on, actually. So you have to deviate what we call Buddha and God. God could be universal, and each culture representing the image or the understanding of the God differently. So that can be mystical, and we can respect each other's definition or description about the God. Try not to be tolerable to embrace other cultures as well. I'm not trying to talk about what is God here. I'm trying to talk about the difference between what is Buddha means and what is God means. Buddha is a human being who's trying to break through his own limitation to achieve what God means there. So he achieved himself as he was a human being, achieve dedicating, put an effort that human can do, and then later on he claimed himself that he understood what the God's uh, meaning is. So he was getting close to God and become as a oneness. It does not mean he became a God. That's different. So in Christianity, I would say you are worshiping God and you do follow what God's meaning, and you being when you go to heaven, then you are being close to the God's word, God's realm, in a sense. So that could be a little slightly different approach, but that's another way you can be close to the God. But what Buddha achieved is done by human being using his human effort, and at the end he achieved whatever the spiritual enlightenment he did, also done by throughout his lifespan. And all he did was, after his enlightenment, after he claimed he is enlightened, he teach his enlightened meanings or teachings to the community that he he served, that at his time era. So the point is all done by human beings, nothing more, nothing less. So that's what we call the Buddhism is very humanistic. You can Google the term humanistic Buddhism. That is a huge movement in last 50 years, that we have to look at Buddhism down to earth, go back to as a humanity, what not throughout the world discussing about what is going on in up there, what is going on in down there, like hell and heaven, all kind of the mystical, writings, and that exists in Buddhist history. Thousands and thousands of writings are related to that, and we do have some activities still serve in the Buddhist temple, that we are worshiping different kinds of the gods and goddesses that you come across in different Buddhist traditional temple, like Chinese Buddhist temple do that, Japanese doing that, Korean do some, and even Southeast Asia, the Theravada Buddhism that you come across, if you come across, they do have those activities in a way. But that's not the ultimate teaching of the Buddhism that we consider it that is not the foundation of the Buddhism. That is more like a adaptation of the cultures that exist in that specific time frame and time and areas, the regions. Buddhism spread out from India, starting from the India, spreading out through the so-called the Silk Road in from India to Himalayan and plateau, and migrating into China about roughly in starting from 2nd century CE until now. So it's about almost 2,000 years, more than could be more than 2,000 years in China. The history of Buddhism was evolved, and also that spread out to other countries like Korean Peninsula, from there to Japan, and also from India to Southeast Asia, like Thailand, Myanmar, and Vietnam, Malaysia, and other areas in down south also. Even if Buddhism went to the west, to European, countries, there is some you may come across, it's very interesting. If you have a chance to go to some museums, you will find some uh, the evidence that Buddhism was influenced long time ago to European cultures. Alexandria was the one, the Alexandria the Great was the one who having war between India, and whenever they do those kind of the social activities or movements, the religion is migrating into uh, and doing some kind of the transitions. So Buddhism spread out all over the places in history. So it adopts many different cultures wherever it goes. It's very adaptive religion. So it's not a one format of the Buddhism was spread out. It's the teaching is the foundation of the teaching is still remained very consistently pretty much same from each one to another, but the format of the religious rituals, activities, and even the presentation is totally different from culture to culture or country to country and throughout the history. So it is a very very, how does, let me put it this way, it's very massive cultural dynamics that if you wanted to looking it into in cultural and historical backgrounds. But put aside all that and just pinpoint that the heart of the foundation of the teaching of the Buddhism is very straightforward and very simple, which is looking to yourself and trying to cultivate your own heart and find that solution. Find a solution from within, from internally by yourself. That is the key, not through the outside sources. So very interestingly, all the answers of your problem is in you. You have the key to open that up and resolve it. No one else can enter that door. You are the only one who holds that key. But if you do not know how to use it, then you're never going to find it. That's what Buddhism is all about in a nutshell. Okay, going back to our present era. We're living in a starting from sometime this year, early this year, we're living in a very challenging time because of the COVID-19 outbreak. So all of us, no one escaped from this chaos. We all suffered. Very similar way, point. And we have to realize, what can we learn from this lesson? If you looking at this problem, this pandemic and economic crisis, trying to be blame to someone else, blame to the whatever the source, whatever the country, whatever the media, conspiracy, all these things is bombarding because we cannot do anything about it. We cannot resolve that at this point. So we're trying to find the scapegoat, right? That's how our mind is working. But try not to fall by that. Try to see in different perspective that may be helping us to be more being positive, remain more calm, and trying to find that reality more clearly and resolve that, go through this hardship without less painful. Buddhism can get some solution on that. I can tell you straight away. How? When we're trying to complain to something else, because that's based on our, at this point, is fear, just pure fear and ignorance. Ignorance in a sense, we do not know the solution. Nobody knows how to deal with this. Not in human history ever come across such a huge, dilemma. Maybe even there is a pandemic long ago in history, but that's different. We do not learn that lesson in our common era. Nobody know how to deal with this, right? So when it comes, we are ignorant on that subject matter, and ignorant. Most important thing is not the disease itself, but ignorant on our mental capacity to embrace this issue. We have a fear, we have an anger, we have all these are combined, intertwined, and become a huge monster. And we are all afraid. We do not know what is coming next. But one thing we have to all remind ourselves is we are still alive. That's bottom line. And we're still have place to stay. Maybe still in a economic hardship that could be occurred in many different ways because of where some people lost the job temporarily, or unemployed, or business is very stopped the business. There's a big huge. So all these are affecting our life, affecting our family, affect also the health concern is another big issue. We have so uncertain that whether we can be immune from this disease or not. Nobody is immune to this. So even no one knows. We may even have one already and just pass through it without going through that high fever stage. That's possibility. So nobody knows what to do with this. Nobody knows we do have antibiotics and what is it called, after you went through this disease, you have your own immune system. So all this up in the air. Your mind is blowing. Everyone's mind is blowing. When you know what is happening, everyone is doing the same thing like this. It is chaos that we never come across in our society. Then, as an individual, as a self person who need to go through this, what is the best way, or what is more efficient way to face it? Say as a Buddhist or someone who, like you guys, trying to learn some Buddhist way, in a sense. You don't necessarily have to be a Buddhist, of course. Or other religious, if you believe in other religion, using your own belief system to overcome, challenge yourself to embrace it with your belief system that you can do. So I'm going to talk about that after this next clip. Okay, let me close it real quick.